Section 4 of Silver Pitchers and Independence, a Centennial Love Story by Louisa M. Alcott. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Section 4, Anna's Whim, Part 1. Now just look at that, cried a young lady, pausing suddenly in her restless march to and fro on one of the wide piazzas of a seaside hotel. That what? Asked her companion, lazily swinging in a hammock. The difference in those two greetings. It's perfectly disgraceful, was the petulant reply. I didn't see anything. Do tell me about it, said Clara, opening her drowsy eyes with sudden interest. Why, young Barlow was lounging up the walk and met pretty Miss Ellery. Off went his hat. He gave her a fine bow, a gracious smile, a worn-out compliment, and then dawdled on again. The next minute Joe King came along. Instantly Barlow woke up, laughed out like a pleased boy, gave him a hearty grip of the hand, a cordial "How are you, old fellow? I'm no end glad to see you," and linking arms the two tramped off, quite beaming with satisfaction. But, child, King is Barlow's best friend, Kitty Ellery only an acquaintance. Besides, it wouldn't do to greet a woman like a man. Yes, it would, especially in this case, for Barlow adores Kate and might, at least, treat her to something better than the nonsense he gives other girls. But no, it's proper to simper and compliment, and he'll do it till his love gets the better of prunes and prisms and makes him sincere and earnest. This is a new whim of yours. You surely wouldn't like to have any man call out, "How are you, Anna?" slap you on the shoulder, and nearly shake your hand off, as Barlow did King's just now, said Clara, laughing at her friend. Yes, I would, answered Anna perversely, if he really meant it to express affection or pleasure. A good grip of the hand and a plain, hearty word would please me infinitely better than all the servile bowing down and sweet nonsense I've had lately. I'm not a fool. Then why am I treated like one? She continued, knitting her handsome brows and pacing to and fro like an angry leopardess. Why don't men treat me like a reasonable being? Talk sense to me, give me their best ideas, tell me their plans and ambitions. Let me enjoy the real man in them and know what they honestly are. I don't want to be a goddess stuck up on a pedestal. I want to be a woman down among them, to help and be helped by our acquaintance. It wouldn't do, I fancy. They wouldn't like it, and would tell you to keep to your own sex. But my own sex don't interest or help me one bit. Women have no hope but to be married, and that is soon told. No ideas but dress and show, and I'm tired to death of both. No ambition but to outshine their neighbors, and I despise that. Thank you, love, blandly murmured Clara. It is true, and you know it. There are sensible women, but not in my set, and I don't seem to find them. I've tried the life set down for girls like me, and for 3 years I've lived and enjoyed it. Now I'm tired of it. I want something better, and I mean to have it. Men will follow, admire, flatter, and love me, for I please them and they enjoy my society. Very well. Then it's fair that I should enjoy theirs. And I should, if they would let me. It's perfectly maddening to have flocks of brave, bright fellows round me, full of everything that is attractive, strong, and helpful, yet not be able to get at it, because society ordains twaddle between us instead of sensible conversation and sincere manners. What shall we do about it, love? Asked Clara, enjoying her friend's tirade. You will submit to it and get a mental dyspepsia like all the other fashionable girls. I won't submit if I can help it, even if I shock Mrs. Grundy by my efforts to get plain bread and beef instead of confectionery. Anna walked in silence for a moment and then burst out again, more energetically than ever. Oh, I do wish I could find one sensible man who would treat me as he treats his male friends, even roughly, if he is honest and true, who would think me worthy of his confidence, ask my advice, let me give him whatever I have that is wise and excellent, and be my friend in all good faith. Ahem, said Clara, with a significant laugh that angered Anna. You need not try to abash me with your jeers. I know what I mean, and I stand by my guns, in spite of your hems. I do not want lovers. I've had dozens, and am tired of them. I will not marry till I know the man thoroughly. And how can I know him, with this veil between us? They don't guess what I really am, and I want to prove to them and to myself that I possess brains and a heart, as well as heavenly eyes, a queenly figure, and a mouth made for kissing. The scorn with which Anna uttered the last words amused her friend immensely, for the petulant beauty had never looked handsomer than at that moment. If any man saw you now, he'd promise whatever you ask, no matter how absurd. But don't excite yourself, dear child. It is too warm for heroics. Anna leaned on the wide baluster a moment, looking thoughtfully out upon the sea, and as she gazed, a new expression stole over her charming face, changing its disdainful warmth to soft regret. This is not all a whim. I know what I covet, because I had it once, she said with a sigh. I had a boy friend when I was a girl, and for several years we were like brother and sister. Ah, what happy times we had together, Frank and I. We played and studied, quarreled and made up, dreamed splendid dreams, and loved one another in our simple child fashion, never thinking of sex, rivalry, or any of the forms and follies that spoil maturer friendships. What became of him? Did he die angelically in his early bloom, or outgrow his platonics with round jackets? Asked Clara. He went to college. I went abroad to be finished off, and when we met a year ago the old charm was all gone, for we were in society and had our masks on. So the boy and girl friendship did not ripen into love and end the romance properly? No, thank heaven, no flirtation spoilt the pretty story. Frank was too wise and I too busy. Yet I remember how glad I was to see him, though I hid it properly and pretended to be quite unconscious that I was anything but a belle. I got paid for my deceit, though, for in spite of his admiration, I saw he was disappointed in me. I should not have cared if I had been disappointed in him, but I was quick to see that he was growing one of the strong, superior men who command respect. I wanted to keep his regard, at least, and I seemed to have nothing but beauty to give in return. I think I never was so hurt in my life as I was by his not coming to see me after a week or two, and hearing him say to a friend one night, when I thought I was at my very best, "She is spoilt like all the rest." I do believe you loved him, and that is why you won't love any one else, cried Clara, who had seen her friend in her moods before, but never understood them. and thought she had found a clue now. No, said Anna with a quiet shake of the head. No, I only wanted my boy friend back, and could not find him. The fence between us was too high, and I could not climb over as I used to do when I leaped the garden wall to sit in a tree and help Frank with his lessons. Has the uncivil wretch never come back? Asked Clara, interested in the affair. Never. He is too busy shaping his life bravely and successfully to waste his time on a frivolous butterfly like Anna West. An eloquent little gesture of humility made the words almost pathetic. Kind-hearted Clara was touched by the sight of tears in the heavenly eyes, and tumbling out of the hammock, she embraced the queenly figure and warmly pressed the lips that were made for kissing, thereby driving several approaching gentlemen to the verge of distraction. Now don't be tragical, darling. You have nothing to cry for, I'm sure. Young, lovely, rich, and adored, what more can any girl want? Said Clara, gushingly. Something besides admiration to live for, answered Anna, adding with a shrug as she saw several hats fly off and several manly countenances beam upon her. Never mind, my fit is over now. Let us go and dress for tea. Miss West usually took a brisk pull in her own boat before breakfast, a habit which lured many indolent young gentlemen out of their beds at unaccustomed hours in the hope that they might have the honor of splashing their legs helping her off, the privilege of wishing her bon voyage, or the crowning rapture of accompanying her. On the morning after her fit, as she called the discontent of a really fine nature with the empty life she led, she was up and out unusually early, for she had kept her room with a headache all the evening, and now longed for fresh air and exercise. As she prepared the gull for a start, she was idly wondering what early bird would appear eager to secure the coveted worm when a loud and cheerful voice was heard calling, "Hello, Anna!" and a nautically attired gentleman hove in sight, waving his hat as he hailed her. She started at the unceremonious salute and looked back. Then her whole face brightened beautifully as she sprang up the bank, saying, with a pretty mixture of hesitation and pleasure, "Why, Frank, is that you? Do you doubt it?" And the newcomer shook both her hands so vigorously that she winced a little as she said, laughing, "No, I don't. That is the old squeeze with extra power in it. How are you? Going for a pull? Take me along and show me the lions. There's a good soul." "With pleasure. When did you come?" asked Anna, settling the black ribbon under the sailor collar, which set off her white throat charmingly. "Last night. I caught a glimpse of you at tea, but you were surrounded then and vanished immediately afterward. So when I saw you skipping over the rocks just now, I gave chase, and here I am. Shall I take an oar?" asked Frank, as she motioned him to get in. "No, thank you. I prefer to row myself and don't need any help," she answered, with an imperious little wave of the hand, for she was glad to show him she could do something besides dance, dress, and flirt. "All right, then I'll do the luxurious and enjoy myself." And without offering to help her in, Frank seated himself, folded his arms, stretched out his long legs, and placidly remarked, "Pull away, skipper." Anna was pleased with his frank and friendly greeting, and feeling as if old times had come again, sprang in, prepared to astonish him with her skill. "Might I suggest that you—" began Frank, as she pushed off. "No suggestions or advice allowed aboard this ship. I know what I'm about, though I am a woman, was the severe answer, as the boat glided from the wharf. Aye, aye, sir, and Frank meekly subsided, with a twinkle of amusement in the eyes that rested approvingly on the slender figure in a blue boating suit and the charming face under the sailor hat. Anna paddled her way dexterously out from among the fleet of boats riding at anchor in the little bay. Then she seated herself, adjusted one oar, and looked about for the other rowlock. It was nowhere visible, and after a silent search she deigned to ask, "Have you seen the thing anywhere?" "I saw it on the bank." "Why didn't you tell me before?" "I began to, but was quenched, so I obeyed orders." "You haven't forgotten how to tease," said Anna petulantly. "Nor you to be willful." She gave him a look that would have desolated most men, but only made Frank smile affably as she paddled laboriously back, recovered the rowlock, and then her temper, as, with a fine display of muscle, she pulled out to sea. Getting into the current, she let the boat drift, and soon forgot time and space in the bewildering conversation that followed. "What have you been doing since I saw you last?" she asked, looking as rosy as a milkmaid as she stopped rowing and tied up her wind-tossed hair. "Working like a beaver. You see," and then, to her utter amazement, Frank entered into an elaborate statement of his affairs, quite as if she understood all about it, and her opinion was valuable. It was all Greek to Anna, but she was immensely gratified, for it was just the way the boy used to tell her his small concerns in the days when each had firm faith in the other's wisdom. She tried to look as if she understood all about investments, percentage, and long credit, but she was out of her depth in 5 minutes and dared say nothing, lest she should betray her lamentable ignorance on all matters of business. She got out of the scrape by cleverly turning the conversation to old times, and youthful reminiscences soon absorbed them both. The faint, far off sound of a gong recalled her to the fact that breakfast was nearly ready, and, turning the boat, she was dismayed to see how far they had floated. She stopped talking and rowed her best, but wind and tide were against her. She was faint with hunger, and her stalwart passenger made her task doubly hard. He offered no help, however, but did the luxurious to the life, leaning back, with his hat off, and dabbling his hands in the way that most impedes the progress of a boat. Pride kept Anna silent till her face was scarlet, her palms blistered, and her breath most gone. Then, and not till then, did she condescend to say, with a gasp, poorly concealed by an amiable smile, "Do you care to row? I ought to have asked you before." "I'm very comfortable, thank you," answered Frank. Then, as an expression of despair flitted over poor Anna's face, he added bluntly, "I'm getting desperately hungry, so I don't care if I do shorten the voyage a bit." With a sigh of relief, she rose to change seats, and expecting him to help her, she involuntarily put out her hands as she passed. But Frank was busy turning back his cuffs and never stirred a finger, so that she would have lost her balance and gone overboard if she had not caught his arm. "What's the matter, skipper?" he asked, standing the sudden grip as steadily as a mast. "Why didn't you help me? You have no more manners than a turtle," cried Anna, dropping into the seat with the frown of a spoiled beauty, accustomed to be gallantly served and supported at every step. Frank only added to his offense by laughing as he said carelessly, "You seemed so independent I didn't like to interfere." So if I had gone overboard, you would not have fished me out unless I asked you to do it, I suppose? In that case, I'm afraid I shouldn't have waited for orders. We can't spare you to the mermen yet." Something in the look he gave her appeased Anna's resentment, and she sat silently admiring the strong, swift strokes that sent the gull skimming over the water. "Not too late for breakfast, after all," she said graciously, as they reached the wharf, where several early strollers stood watching their approach. "Poor thing, you look as if you needed it," answered Frank. But he let her get out alone, to the horror of Messrs. Barlow, King & Co., and while she fastened the boat, Frank stood settling his hatband with the most exasperating unconsciousness of his duty. "What are you going to do with yourself this morning?" she asked as she walked up the rocky path with no arm to lean upon. "Fish. Will you come along?" "No, thank you. One gets so burnt. I shall go to my hammock under the pine," was the graciously suggestive reply of the lady, who liked a slave to fan or swing her, and seldom lacked several to choose from. "See you at dinner, then. My room is in the cottage. So bye bye for the present." And with a nod Frank strolled away, leaving the lovely Miss West to mount the steps and cross the hall unescorted. "The dear fellow's manners need polish. I must take him in hand, I see. And yet he is very nice, in spite of his brusque ways," thought Anna indulgently. And more than once that morning she recalled his bluff "Hello, Anna," as she swung languidly in her hammock, with a devoted being softly reading Tennyson to her inattentive ears. At dinner she appeared in unusual spirits, and kept her end of the table in a ripple of merriment by her witty and satirical sallies, privately hoping that her opposite neighbor would discover that she could talk well when she chose to do so. But Frank was deep in politics, discussing some new measure with such earnestness and eloquence that Anna, pausing to listen for a moment, forgot her lively gossip in one of the great questions of the hour. She was listening with silent interest when Frank suddenly appealed to her to confirm some statement he had just made, and she was ignominiously obliged to confess she knew too little about the matter to give any opinion. No compliment ever paid her was more flattering than his way of turning to her now and then, as if including her in the discussion as a matter of course, and never had she regretted anything more keenly than she did her ignorance on a subject that every man and woman should understand and espouse. She did her best to look intelligent, racked her brain to remember facts which she had heard discussed for weeks without paying any attention to them, and thanks to her quick wit and womanly sympathy, she managed to hold her own, saying little but looking much. The instant dinner was over, she sent a servant to the reading room for a file of late papers, and retiring to a secluded corner, read up with a diligence that not only left her with clearer ideas on one subject, but also a sense of despair at her own deficiencies in the knowledge of many others. "I really must have a course of solid reading. I do believe that is what I need, and I'll ask Frank where to begin. He always was an intelligent boy, but I was surprised to hear how well he talked. I was actually proud of him. I wonder where he is, by the way. Clara wants to be introduced, and I want to see how he strikes her." End of section 4, Anna's Whim, Part 1. Read by Cynthia Malone, Sartell, Minnesota, March 15th, 2023.